What's going on, everybody? I'm back with another video. This video is going to be looking at how we can create overloads and use them effectively in advanced positions between the lines. And before we get into that, check out both my books. They're online, they're on Amazon, and there's links to them in the description below. So be sure to check out those books, and let's get right into the video. So to line up, we have a Chelsea-inspired build-up structure with a 3 central defender build-up, first line followed by 2 holding midfielders, 2 more advanced central attacking midfielders, and wing backs with a center striker leading the line. So from here, we can look at how we can get players to overload the space between the lines, specifically in the half space. Now there's a simpler rotation to do this, which we can look at right now, is moving into a strong side midfield rotation using our double pivot to then have our number 10 or our second holding midfielder move into a more advanced position in between the lines. So now we have an overload which consists of players in the half space in a more advanced position. And an overload is just simply an uneven occupation of space numerically from your team. So here we have our overload in between the lines, and now we can think of how we can use this. Now, when you overload space between the lines, it typically allows you to affect the opponents in a little bit more drastic way. So if we see our central defender moving forward with the ball, he'll attract most likely one of the wide midfielders, and now the rest of the opposing team's midfielder will shift across, and depending on the orientation of this wide player, they might even shift with the wing back, allowing us to then pull out a central midfielder in the opposing team's low block, and therefore 1-4-1. So now we see this, and we have still our 2 players between the lines with our holding midfielder. So now what we can do is we can look to create routes through the wide area through diagonal passing options. We can narrow this player to then create a stronger foothold into the half space, or if the defensive team is a little bit wider, we can use this. But typically when you have 2 players between the lines, one player can pin and narrow the defense while the other is then created as the free player. And he's not the free player at the moment because he doesn't have access to the ball. But creating links to this player via a holding midfielder allows us to then use this overload effectively and create superiority going forward. Another way we can use this superiority is to affect the midfielders and even just pin the holding midfielder between the lines. So now we're looking to move into a different area. So now we're pinning the holding midfielder using the team's man orientation, and now we can attract the fullback to a higher position, which then creates space between the lines, which then creates space in behind, which can be exploited using a vertical run and a simple pass between the lines. So using overloads is all about affecting the opponents and looking to create space, exploit a free player between the lines. And now we can look at a more structure overload involving more than just 2 players between the lines. So now we'll have them more structured. We have now, if we look at it as a whole, a rondo structure of 4 players on the outer part of this structure, and then in the middle we have our overloaded player who's now between the lines and is the focal point of this overload. And what can happen now is with a very clear overload, the team may even overshift to compensate for this overload, which then we can look to exploit the weak side simply here by having a jumping central defender to then use the half space again to exploit. So oftentimes when you use effective overloads, the team will overcompensate this out of possession and overshift to one side, increasing compactness and cutting off the overload, making it ineffective. But your team in possession can still be very effective by using the weak side and the space left vulnerable by the opposing defense. And this overload is made possible because we have 5 players on this strong side committed in and around the half space and entering just the wide area slightly. So then on the weak side we have an easily occupied half space via 2 players, allowing to then create maybe even a wide structure among these players if the ball is circulated, and now we have a 3-man balanced wide structure to attack through the vacant space. And that's going to wrap up today's video. Just a quick video talking about overloads and giving some ideas to everybody on different ways we can apply them. So I'll see you in the next video.